please. We don't want them cluttering up. Thank you. Can we have athletes for the next two events immediately to go to their assembly area, please? That's the Group B girls 3 metre and the Group A girls platform. Can we have judges to seats promptly, please?
We'll cut, we'll call, got a dream that finally stopped. We'll ride till dawn, we'll call, stay around.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Plymouth Life Centre for the Elite Junior Diving Championships 2025. Welcome to this afternoon's Session 1 events, which will feature the following: the Girls B 3 metre preliminary and the Girls A platform preliminary. And your officials for this afternoon's competitions. The Group B Girls 3 metre, our referee is Alice Clark. Judges: Sarah Barrow, Dan Murphy, Malcolm Green, Francesca Del Cello and Roger Page. And for the platform, your referee is Lindsay Fraser. Platform board judge, Lexi Bushnell. And judges, Kim White, Kerry Ewing, Gerald Trenchard, Charlotte West and Susie Bamber. of the referee's permission, Alice, please? Okay, our first diver of the Group B Girls 3 metre preliminary. First diver, Sienna Ray Mills, Diveland and Aquatics Club. Forward 1.5 somersaults, piked.
I have the referee's permission, but no diver.
Six, 5.5, 6.5, 6. Kalila McCrickard, Sandwell Diving Club. Forward 1.5 somersaults, piked.
We have our first diver on the 7 metre, Sky Fisher Eames, Dive London Aquatics, inward 1.5 somersaults, piked.
5, 5, 5, 5.5, 5. Alice Murphy, Southend Diving, inward 1.5 somersaults, piked.
Seven and a half, 7, 7, 7, 7. Iliana Stiliani Karakosta from Greece, forward 1.5 somersaults, piked, 10 metre.
6, 6, 6.5, 6, 5.5. Mirto Cartioti, Greece, forward 1.5 somersaults, piked.
7.5, 8, 7, 7, 8. Natalie Bath, Southampton Diving, forward 1.5 somersaults with tuck, 7.5 metre.
6.5, 6.5, 6.5, 6, 6. Izzy Diacon, City of Sheffield Diving Club, forward 1.5 somersaults, piked.
5, 5, 4.5, 5, 5.5. Livia Thomas, City of Leeds, inward 1.5 somersaults, piked, 10 metre.
6, 5.5, 6.5, 6.5, 6.5. Emma Mansfield, Southend Diving, inward 1.5 somersaults, piked.
6.5, 6.5, 6.5, 6.5, 6.5.
5.5, 6, 6, 6, 6.
Lois Spellcowan, Southend Diving, forward 1.5 somersaults, piked, 7.5 metre.
Daisy Lindsay, City of Sheffield Diving Club, forward 1.5 somersaults, piked.
7, 6, 6, 6, 7. Francesca Probert, Southend Diving, inward 1.5 somersaults, piked, 7.5 metre.
7.5, 6.5, 7.5, 7, 7.5. Erin O'Neill, Southend Diving, forward 1.5 somersaults, piked. 6, 5.5, 7, 5.5, 6.5.
7.5, 6.5, 6.5, 7, 7.
Caitlin Costa, Dive London Aquatics Club, inward 1.5 somersaults, piked.
Sophie May Hancock, City of Sheffield, forward 1.5 somersaults, piked, 10 metre. 7.5, 7.5, 7.5, 8, 7.5.
6.5, 6.5, 5.5, 6.5, 6.
Alice Bilton, Southend diving, forward 1.5 somersaults height, 7.5 metre.
Jamila Eakin, Edinburgh Diving Club, forward 1.5 somersaults, piked. Six and a half, 7, 7, 7, 6.5.
6, 6, 6.5, 6, 6.5.
Sarah Root, Diving New Zealand, forward 1.5 somersaults, piked.
Lexi Clark, Dive London Aquatics, inward 1.5 somersaults height, 7.5 metre.
Five and a half, 5, 5.5, 5.5, 6. Luca Guthrie, Diving New Zealand, forward 1.5 somersaults, piked.
7.5, 6.5, 7, 7, 7. Corinne Burrows Mackley, Dive London Aquatics, forward 1.5 somersaults height, 10 metre.
5.5, 5.5, 6, 6, 6. Round 2, Sienna, back dive, piked.
6.5, 7.5, 7.5, 7, 7.5. Elizabeth Hart, Southampton Diving, forward 1.5 somersaults height, 10 metre.
7, 6.5, 7.5, 7, 7. Galila, inward 1.5 somersaults, piked.
7.5, 6.5, 7, 5.5, 6.
7, 6, 6, 6.5, 5.5.
Kate Gardner, City of Leeds, back dive piked, 10 metre.
Alice, forward 1.5 somersaults, piked.
7, 6.5, 6, 6, 6.5.
5.5, 6, 6, 6, 5.5.
Rebecca Vega, City of Sheffield, forward 1.5 somersaults height, 10 metre.
Mirto, back dive, piked.
7.5, 7.5, 6.5, 8, 7.5.
6.5, 6.5, 6.5, 6.5, 6.
Lois Bruce, City of Sheffield, forward 1.5 somersaults height, 7.5 metre.
Izzy, back dive, piked.
8, 8, 8, 7.5, 8.5. Evie Tierney, Southampton Diving, forward 1.5 somersaults height, 10 metre.
5.5, 5.5, 5, 5.5, 5.5. Emma, forward 1.5 somersaults, piked. 5.5, 6, 5, 6, 5.5. Daisy, back dive, piked.
7, 6.5, 6.5, 6.5, 6.5. Jasmine Walcroft, Australia, forward 1.5 somersaults piked, 10 metre.
Five, 5.5, 5.5, 5. Erin, inward 1.5 somersaults piked.
7, 6.5, 6.5, 6.5, 6.5. Tallulah Clark, Dive London Aquatics, inward 1.5 somersaults piked, 10 metre.
Five, 5, 5, 5, 5. Caitlin, forward 1.5 somersaults piked.
6, 6.5, 6.5, 6, 6. Jessica Nairn, Edinburgh Diving, back dive piked, 7.5 metre.
6.5, 6.5, 6, 6.5, 6. Jamila, back dive piked.
7.5, 6, 6.5, 6.5, 7.5. Olivia Fox, Diving New Zealand, forward 1.5 somersaults piked, 7.5 metre.
6.5, 6.5, 7, 7, 6.5. Zara, inward 1.5 somersaults piked.
6.5, 6.5, 7, 6, 7. Riley Oxenham, Diving New Zealand, forward 1.5 somersaults piked, 7.5 metre.
6, 6, 6.5, 6, 6. Luca, inward 1.5 somersaults piked.
5.5, 6, 5.5, 5.5, 6. Round 2, Sky, arm stand somersault piked, 7.5 metre.
4.5, 4.5, 5, 5, 5.5. Round 3, Sienna, reverse dive piked.
4.5, 6.5, 6, 6.5, 5.
7, 6, 7, 6.5, 6.5.
Ileana, inward 1.5 somersaults piked, 10 metre.
Kalila, back dive piked. 6, 5, 5.5, 5.5, 6. Alice, back dive piked.
6.5, 6.5, 5, 5.5, 6.5. Natalie, inward 1.5 somersaults piked, 7.5 metre.
6, 5.5, 6.5, 6, 5.5.
4, 5, 4, 4, 4.5.
Mirto, reverse dive piked.
Livia, back dive piked, 10 metre.
6, 6, 6.5, 6.5, 6. Izzy, reverse dive piked.
7.5, 7.5, 7.5, 7, 7. Lowest back dive height, 7.5 meter.
5.5, 5, 5.5, 6, 5.5. Emma, back dive, piked.
5.5, 5.5, 5.5, 4.5, 5.5. Francesca, forward 1.5, somersaults piked, 7.5 meter.
6, 6, 6, 6, 6. Daisy, reverse dive, piked.
6.5, 7, 7, 6.5, 8. Sophie, back dive piked, 7.5 meter.
6.5, 6, 6, 6.5, 6.5. Erin, back dive, piked.
7.5, 7, 6.5, 7, 7.5. Alice, inward 1.5, somersaults piked, 7.5 meter.
6.5, 6, 6.5, 7, 6. Caitlin, back dive, piked.
6.5, 6, 6, 6, 6.5.
6.5, 6, 6.5, 7, 6.5.
Lexi, back dive piked, 7.5 meter.
Jamila, reverse dive, piked.
7.5, 7, 7, 8, 8.
6, 6, 6.5, 6.5, 6.
Corinne, arm stand somersault piked, 10 meter.
Zara, back dive, piked. 5, 4.5, 4.5, 5, 5. Luca, back dive, piked.
7, 7, 7, 7, 7. Elizabeth, inward 1.5, somersaults piked, 10 meter.
5, 5.5, 6, 5.5, 5. Round 4, Sienna, forward 1.5 somersaults, 1 twist, free position.
Six and a half, 6, 6, 5.5, 5.5.
7, 7, 6.5, 7, 6.
Kate, reverse dive piked, 10 meter.
Kalila, reverse dive, piked. 6, 5.5, 6, 4.5, 5.5. Alice, reverse dive, piked.
7, 6, 6.5, 6.5, 6.5. Rebecca, inward 1.5 somersaults piked at 10 metre.
5, 5.5, 6, 5.5, 5.5. Mid-toe, inward 1.5 somersaults piked.
7.5, 6.5, 7, 7.5, 7. Lowest, inward 1.5 somersaults piked at 7.5 metre.
6, 5.5, 6, 6.5, 6. Izzy, inward 1.5 somersaults piked.
8, 7.5, 7.5, 8, 8. Evie, inward 1.5 somersaults piked at 10 metre.
7, 6.5, 6, 6.5, 6. Emma, reverse dive piked. 6, 6, 6.5, 6, 6.5.
7, 6.5, 6, 6.5, 6.5.
Daisy, inward 1.5 somersaults piked.
Jasmine, inward 1.5 somersaults piked at 10 metre.
6.5, 5.5, 6.5, 6, 6.
7.5, 6, 5.5, 6, 7.
Erin, reverse dive piked.
Tallulah, forward 1.5 somersaults piked at 10 metre.
6, 6, 6, 6, 6. Caitlin, reverse dive piked.
6.5, 7.5, 7, 6.5, 6. Jessica, reverse dive piked, 7.5 metre.
5.5, 5.5, 5, 6, 5.5. Jamila, inward 1.5 somersaults piked.
6.5, 6.5, 6, 6.5, 7. Olivia, inward 1.5 somersaults piked at 7.5 metre.
7, 7, 7, 7.5, 7. Zara, reverse dive piked.
6, 6, 6, 6, 6.
5.5, 5, 5.5, 5, 6.
Riley, back dive piked, 5 metre.
Luca, reverse dive piked. 3.5, 3.5, 3.5, 4, 3.5.
6, 6, 5.5, 6, 6.
Round 5, Sienna, inward 1.5 somersaults piked.
Round 3, Sky, back dive piked, 7.5 metre.
7, 6.5, 6.5, 7, 6.
7, 7, 7, 7.5, 7.5.
Kalila, forward 1.5 somersaults, 1 twist, free position.
Ileana, arm stand somersault, pint, 10 meter.
5.5, 5.5, 6, 5.5, 6. Alice, forward 1.5 somersaults, 1 twist, free position.
7, 8, 6.5, 7, 7. Natalie, reverse knife pint, 7.5 meter.
6.5, 6, 5.5, 6, 6. Mirto, forward 1.5 somersaults, 1 twist, free position.
6, 6, 5, 5, 6. Livia, reverse knife pint, 10 meter.
5.5, 5.5, 6, 5, 5.5. Izzy, forward 1.5 somersaults, 1 twist, free position.
6, 6.5, 7, 7, 7. Lois, reverse knife pint, 7.5 meter.
7, 6.5, 6, 6, 6. Emma, forward 1.5 somersaults, 1 twist, free position.
7.5, 7, 6.5, 6.5, 6.5.
6, 6, 6, 6.5, 6.5.
Francesca, reverse knife pint, 7.5 meter.
Daisy, forward 1.5 somersaults, 1 twist, free position. 6.5, 6, 5.5, 6, 6. Erin, back 1.5 somersaults, half twist, free position.
7, 7, 6.5, 6, 6. Sophie, arm stand somersault pint, 10 meter.
6, 5.5, 6, 6, 6.5. Caitlin, forward 1.5 somersaults, 1 twist, free position.
7, 7.5, 7, 7.5, 7. Alice, reverse dive pint, 7.5 meter.
7, 6, 6.5, 7, 6.5. Jamila, forward 1.5 somersaults, 1 twist, free position.
6.5, 6.5, 6, 5.5, 6.5. Lexi, reverse dive pint, 7.5 meter.
7, 7, 6.5, 7, 6. Zara, back 1.5 somersaults, half twist, free position.
6.5, 6.5, 6.5, 6.5, 6.5.
5.5, 5.5, 5.5, 5.5, 5.5.
Corin, inward 1.5 somersaults pint, 10 meter.
Luca, back 1.5 somersaults, half twist, free position. 5.5, 5.5, 6.5, 5, 5.5.
7, 6.5, 5.5, 6.5, 7.
Round 6, Sienna, inward 2.5 somersaults with tuck.
Elizabeth, reverse knife pike, 10 metre.
Six and a half, 6, 6, 6.5, 6. Galila, forward 2.5 somersaults, piked.
6.5, 6, 6.5, 6.5, 7. Kate, forward 1.5 somersaults piked, 7.5 metre.
5, 5.5, 5.5, 5.5, 4.5. Alice, forward 2.5 somersaults, piked.
6.5, 6, 6, 5.5, 4.5. Rebecca, forward 1.5 somersaults, 1 twist, position free, 10 metre.
5.5, 5.5, 6.5, 6, 5.5. Mirto, forward 2.5 somersaults, piked.
6.5, 6, 6, 6.5, 6.5. Lois, back dive piked, 7.5 metre.
6.5, 6, 5.5, 6, 6. Izzy, forward 2.5 somersaults, piked.
7, 5.5, 5.5, 6, 6.
6.5, 6, 6, 6.5, 6.
Evie, reverse knife piked, 7.5 metre.
Emma, back 2.5 somersaults with tuck. 4, 3.5, 5, 4, 5.
6, 6.5, 6, 6.5, 7.
Daisy, forward 2.5 somersaults, piked.
Jasmine, back dive piked, 7.5 metre.
6, 6, 6, 6, 6. Erin, back 1.5 somersaults, 1.5 twists, free position.
7, 7, 6.5, 6.5, 7.5. Tallulah, back dive piked, 10 metre.
6, 6, 5, 5.5, 5.5. Caitlin, forward 2.5 somersaults, piked.
6.5, 7, 7.5, 6.5, 6. Jessica, forward 1.5 somersaults piked, 7.5 metre.
7, 7, 6.5, 7.5, 7. Jamila, back 1.5 somersaults, piked.
8, 7, 7, 7, 7.5. Olivia, arm stand somersault height, 7.5 meter.
Six and a half, 6, 6, 6.5, 6. Zara, forward 2.5 somersaults, piked.
Seven and a half, 7.5, 7, 7.5, 7.5.
5, 5, 5, 5, 5.5.
Riley, reverse knife piked, 5 meter.
Luca, forward 2.5 somersaults, piked.
Six, 6, 5.5, 5.5, 6.
6, 6, 5.5, 6.5.
Round 4, Sky, reverse dive piked, 10 meter.
Round 7, Sienna, back 2.5 somersaults with tuck.
Seven and a half, 8, 7.5, 7, 7.5.
4.5, 4, 5, 4.5, 4.
Ileana, reverse knife piked, 10 meter.
Kalila, inward 2.5 somersaults with tuck. Four, 4.5, 3.5, 4, 4.
4.5, 5, 4.5, 4.5, 4.5.
Alice, inward 2.5 somersaults with tuck.
Natalie, forward 1.5 somersaults, 1 twist, position free, 7.5 meter. Six, 5.5, 6, 5, 6.5. Livia, arm stand somersault piked, 10 meter.
Four and a half, 4.5, 5, 6, 4.5. Mirto, inward 2.5 somersaults with tuck.
Six, 6.5, 6.5, 6, 6.5. Lois, back 1.5 somersaults, a half twist, position free, 7.5 meter.
6, 5.5, 6, 6.5, 5. Izzy, reverse 1.5 somersaults, piked.
Six and a half, 6, 6.5, 5.5, 7.
6, 5.5, 6, 5, 5.5.
Francesca, back 1.5 somersaults, a half twist, position free, 7.5 meter.
Emma, inward 2.5 somersaults with tuck. 5 and a half, 5 and a half, 5 and a half, 5 and a half, 5 and a half.
6 and a half, 7, 7, 6, 7.
Daisy, inward 2 and a half somersaults with tuck.
Sophie, inward 1 and a half somersaults piked, 10 metre. Seven and a half, 6 and a half, 7, 7, 7. Alice back 1 and a half somersaults, a half twist, position free, 7 and a half metre.
5, 5 and a half, 5 and a half, 6, 6. Erin back 2 and a half somersaults with tuck.
6 and a half, 6, 5 and a half, 6, 6 and a half. Lexi, arm stand somersault piked, 7 and a half metre.
4 and a half, 4, 5, 4 and a half, 5. Caitlin back 2 and a half somersaults with tuck.
7 and a half, 7, 8, 8, 7. Corinne, reverse dive piked, 10 metre.
7, 6, 6 and a half, 7, 6. Jamila forward 2 and a half somersaults piked.
7 and a half, 7, 7 and a half, 7, 7. Elizabeth back 1 and a half somersaults, a half twist, position free, 7 and a half metre.
6 and a half, 6 and a half, 6, 7, 6. Zara inward 2 and a half somersaults with tuck.
7, 6 and a half, 6 and a half, 5, 6 and a half.
3 and a half, 3 and a half, 4 and a half, 4 and a half, 4.
Kate, inward 1 and a half somersaults piked, 7 and a half metre.
Luca inward 2 and a half somersaults with tuck. 4 and a half, 5, 5, 5 and a half, 4 and a half.
7 and a half, 6, 5 and a half, 5, 6.
Final round, Sienna Ray Mills, Dive London Aquatics Club. Reverse 2 and a half somersaults with tuck.
Rebecca, reverse dive piked, 7 and a half metre.
7, 7, 5 and a half, 7, 7. Khalila McCrickout, Sandwell Diving Club. Reverse 1 and a half somersaults with tuck.
6, 6, 6, 6, 7. Lois, reverse dive piked, 7 and a half metre.
4 and a half, 4, 4 and a half, 4, 4. Alice Murphy, Southend Diving. Forward 1 and a half somersaults, 2 twists, free position.
8, 8, 8, 8 and a half, 8. Evie, forward 1.5 somersaults, 1 twist, position free, 10 meter.
Five and a half, 6, 6, 6, 6. Mirto Cartiotti, Greece. Back 2.5 somersaults with tuck.
Seven, 6.5, 6.5, 5.5, 6.5. Jasmine, reverse knife pike, 7.5 meter.
Five and a half, 5, 6, 5.5, 5.5. Izzy Diacon, City of Sheffield Diving Club. Inward 2.5 somersaults with tuck.
7, 6.5, 6, 6, 6. Tallulah, reverse knife pike, 10 meter.
Six, 5.5, 5, 6, 5. Emma Mansfield, South End Diving. Back 1.5 somersaults, 1.5 twists, free position.
Five and a half, 6.5, 6, 6.5, 6. Jessica, inward 1.5 somersaults pike, 7.5 meter.
6, 5.5, 6, 6, 6. Daisy Lindsay, City of Sheffield Diving Club. Back 1.5 somersaults, 1.5 twists, free position.
Seven and a half, 7, 7, 7, 7. Olivia, reverse knife pike, 7.5 meter.
Six and a half, 5.5, 5.5, 5, 5.5.
Five and a half, 6, 6, 5.5, 6.
Erin O'Neill, South End Diving. In with 2.5 somersaults with tuck.
Riley, back 1.5 somersaults, a half twist, position free, 5 meter.
Four and a half, 4.5, 4.5, 5.5, 5. Caitlin Costa, Diveland and Aquatics Club. In with 2.5 somersaults with tuck.
Round 5, Sky, forward, 2.5 somersaults, pike, 7.5 meter.
Six and a half, 6, 5.5, 6, 6. Jamila Eakin, Edinburgh Diving Club. In with 2.5 somersaults with tuck.
Five, 5, 5, 4.5, 4.5. Ileana, forward 2.5 somersaults, pike, 10 meter.
Six and a half, 6, 6, 6.5, 6. Zara Root, Diving New Zealand. Back 1.5 somersaults, 1.5 twists, free position.
5.5, 5.5, 4.5, 5.5, 6.
6, 6, 5.5, 5, 6.
Natalie, forward 2.5 somersaults pike, 7.5 metre.
And our final diver, Luca Guthrie, diving New Zealand. Back 2.5 somersaults with tuck.
Six, 5.5, 6, 5.5, 6. Livia, inward 2.5 somersaults pike, 10 metre.
4, 4.5, 4.5, 4, 4.5. That concludes the Group B Girls 3 metre preliminary. Thank you, divers, judges and recorders. We'll have the results for you at the conclusion of the platform event.
Six, 6.5, 6, 5.5. Lois, forward 2.5 somersaults pike, 7.5 metre. 5, 4.5, 4.5, 4, 4. Francesca, forward 2.5 somersaults pike, 7.5 metre. 4.5, 5, 4.5, 5, 5. Sophie, back 2.5 somersaults, a half twist pike, 10 metre. 4.5, 4.5, 4.5, 4.5, 4. Alice, inward 2.5 somersaults with tuck, 7.5 metre. 4.5, 4, 4, 4, 4. Lexi, forward 2.5 somersaults pike, 7.5 metre. 6.5, 6, 6, 6, 6.5. Corinne, back 2.5 somersaults with tuck, 7.5 metre. 6, 5.5, 5, 5.5, 6. Elizabeth, forward 2.5 somersaults pike, 7.5 metre. 7.5, 6.5, 6.5, 6, 7. Kate forward, 2.5 somersaults piked, 7.5 meter. 6.5, 5.5, 6, 5.5, 6.5. Rebecca forward, 2.5 somersaults piked, 7.5 meter. 5.5, 4.5, 4.5, 5, 5.5. Lois forward, 2.5 somersaults piked, 7.5 meter. 6, 6, 7.5, 5.5, 6.5. Evie forward, 2.5 somersaults piked, 7.5 meter. 7, 6.5, 7, 7, 7. Jasmine forward, 2.5 somersaults piked, 5 meter. 6, 6, 6, 5.5, 5.5. Tallulah, arm stand double somersault piked, 10 meter. 6, 6, 6.5, 5.5, 6. Jessica forward, 2.5 somersaults piked, 5 meter. 5.5, 5.5, 5, 4, 5.5. Olivia forward, 2.5 somersaults piked, 5 meter. 4.5, 5, 5, 4.5, 4.5. Riley back 2.5 somersaults with tuck, 7.5 meter. Three and a half, 3.5, 3.5, 3, 3.5. Round 6, Sky, inward 2.5 somersaults with tuck, 7.5 meter. Five and a half, 5.5, 5.5, 6, 6.5. Ileana, back 2.5 somersaults with tuck, 7.5 meter. Four and a half, 4, 4, 4.5, 5.5. Natalie, inward 2.5 somersaults with tuck, 7.5 meter. Six, 5, 6.5, 5.5, 6. Livia, back 2.5 somersaults with tuck, 7.5 meter. Six, 5.5, 7, 7, 7. Lois, inward 2.5 somersaults with tuck, 7.5 meter. Four and a half, 5, 5, 5, 5. Francesca, back 1.5 somersaults, 5 meter. Four, 3.5, 3.5, 2.5, 3.5. Sophie, forward 2.5 somersaults, piked, 7.5 meter. 7, 6, 6.5, 6, 6.5. Alice back 2.5 somersaults with tuck, 7.5 meter. Three and a half, 3, 3.5, 4.5, 4. Lexi, inward 2.5 somersaults pike to 10 meter. 7.5, 6, 7, 7, 7.5. Corin, forward 3.5 somersaults pike to 10 meter. Five and a half, 5, 6, 5.5, 6. Elizabeth, inward 2.5 somersaults with tuck, 7.5 meter. 5.5, 5.5, 4.5, 5.5, 5.5. Kate, back 2.5 somersaults pike to 10 meter. 5.5, 5, 5.5, 5, 6. Rebecca, inward 2.5 somersaults pike to 10 meter. 6.5, 5, 6, 6.5, 6. Lois, inward 2.5 somersaults with tuck, 7.5 meter. 7, 6, 6.5, 6.5, 6.5. Evie back 2.5 somersaults with tuck, 7.5 meter. Four and a half, 4, 4, 4.5, 3.5. Jasmine back 1.5 somersaults piked, 5 meter. 6.5, 5.5, 5.5, 6.5, 7. Tallulah back 2.5 somersaults, a half twist piked at 10 meter. Six, 6.5, 6, 5, 5.5. Jessica inward 2.5 somersaults piked at 10 meter. 6.5, 5.5, 5.5, 6, 5.5. Olivia back 2.5 somersaults, a half twist piked at 10 meter. 4, 5, 4.5, 2.5, 4.5. Riley back 2.5 somersaults, a half twist piked at 10 meter. 7, 5, 6.5, 6.5, 7. Round 7, Sky back 2.5 somersaults with tuck, 7.5 meter. 8, 7, 7.5, 7.5, 7.5. Ileana inward 2.5 somersaults with tuck, 10 meter. 7, 6, 6.5, 7.5, 6.5. Natalie, back 1.5 somersaults, pike, 5 meter. Six and a half, 6, 5.5, 6, 6.5. Livia, reverse 2.5 somersaults with tuck, 10 meter. 4.5, 4.5, 4.5, 4.5, 4.5. Lois, back 2.5 somersaults, a half twist, pike to 10 meter. 4.5, 4, 4.5, 4, 4. Francesca, forward 1.5 somersaults, 1 twist, position 3, 5 meter. 4.5, 5, 5.5, 5, 4.5. Sophie, arm stand, double somersault, pike to 10 meter. 6.5, 6.5, 6, 6, 6.5. Alice, forward 2.5 somersaults, pike to 7.5 meter. 6.5, 6, 6.5, 7, 7. Lexi, arm stand, double somersault, pike to 10 meter. 7.5, 7, 7, 7.5, 7.5. Corin, inward 3.5 somersaults with tuck, 10 meter. 5, 4.5, 4.5, 4.5, 4. Elizabeth, back 1.5 somersaults, pike 5 meter. 7, 6.5, 6, 6, 7. Kate, forward 2.5 somersaults, 1 twist pike to 10 meter. Five and a half, 6, 5, 5.5, 6. Rebecca, forward 2.5 somersaults, 1 twist pike to 10 meter. Four, 4.5, 5.5, 5, 5. Lois back 2.5 somersaults with tuck, 7.5 meter. Five, 5, 5, 5, 4, 5.5. Evie forward 2.5 somersaults, 1 twist pike to 10 meter. Three and a half, 4, 4, 4, 4.5. Jasmine, arm stand back, double somersault, 1.5 twist, position 3, 10 meter. Four and a half, 5, 4.5, 4, 4.5. Tallulah, forward 2.5 somersaults pike to 7.5 meter. Four and a half, 4.5, 4, 4.5, 4.5. Jessica, forward 2.5 somersaults, 1 twist pike to 10 meter. 6, 4.5, 6, 5.5, 6. Olivia, inward 2.5 somersaults, height 10 meter. Seven, 6.5, 7, 6.5, 7. Riley, inward 2.5 somersaults, height 10 meter. Three and a half, 4, 4, 3.5, 4. Final round of dives. Sky Fisheries, Dive London Aquatics. Back 1.5 somersaults, 1.5 twist, position 3, 5 meter. 6, 6.5, 6.5, 6.5, 7. Ilianas, Diliani, Caracosta from Greece. Back 1.5 somersaults, 1.5 twist, position 3, 5 meter. 3.5, 4.5, 3.5, 4, 4. Natalie Barr, Southampton Diving, back 1.5 somersaults, 1.5 twist, position 3, 7.5 meter. 6, 5.5, 6, 6.5, 6.5. Livia Thomas, City of Leeds, back 2.5 somersaults, a half twist, height 10 meter. 6.5, 6, 6.5, 6.5, 6.5. Lois Feldhauer, South End Diving, back 1.5 somersaults, height 5 meter. 5.5, 5, 5, 5.5, 5. Francesca Probert, South End Diving, inward 2.5 somersaults, height 10 meter. 5.5, 5, 5.5, 5, 5. Sophie May Hancock, City of Sheffield, inward 2.5 somersaults with tuck, 10 metre. 6.5, 6, 7, 6.5, 7. Alice Bilton, Southland diving, back 2.5 somersaults, a half twist, pike at 10 metre. 6, 5.5, 5, 5.5, 6. Lexi Clark, dive London Aquatics, back 2.5 somersaults, a half twist, pike at 10 metre. 7, 6.5, 7, 7.5, 7.5. Corinne Burrows Mackley, dive London Aquatics, reverse 2.5 somersaults with tuck, 10 metre. 4.5, 4, 3.5, 4.5, 4.5. Elizabeth Hart, Southampton diving, back 1.5 somersaults, 1.5 twist, position free, 7.5 metre. 6.5, 6.5, 6, 7, 7.5. Kate Gardner, City of Leeds, inward 2.5 somersaults, pike at 10 metre. 6, 5, 5.5, 5, 5.5. Rebecca Vega, City of Sheffield, back 2.5 somersaults, pike at 10 metre. 3 and a half, 3 and a half, 3 and a half, 3, 4. Lowest Bruce, City of Sheffield, forward 2 and a half somersaults, 1 twist pike at 10 metre. 6, 5, 6, 5 and a half, 6. Eva Tierney, Southampton diving, inward 2 and a half somersaults with tuck, 7 and a half metre. 6, 5, 6, 6, 6 and a half. Justin Walcroft, Australia, back 2 and a half somersaults, 1 and a half twist pike at 10 metre. 5 and a half, 5, 4 and a half, 5, 5. Tallulah Clark, Dive London Aquatics, inward 2 and a half somersaults pike at 10 metre. 3 and a half, 3 and a half, 3, 4, 4. Jessica Nairn, Edinburgh diving, back 1 and a half somersaults pike, 5 metre. 4 and a half, 4 and a half, 4 and a half, 4 and a half, 4 and a half. Olivia Fox, diving New Zealand, arm stand double somersault pike at 10 metre. 6 and a half, 4 and a half, 4 and a half, 5, 5 and a half. Riley Oxenham, diving New Zealand, forward 2 and a half somersaults pike, 7 and a half metre. 7, 5 and a half, 6, 5 and a half, 7. Thank you, divers. Thank you, judges. Thank you, recorders. We will have those results for you in just a moment.